Welcome again with the new video of industrial sector of Pakistan. This is module 3 और मॉड्यूल 3 में हमने अभी तक प्रोसेस ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन को डिस्कस किया है पाकिस्तान में and we had discussed that process discussing different time periods related to different types of the governments in Pakistan, democratic governments and then the military governments. Today we'll start with structural adjustment time period in Pakistan, the time period of 1988 onwards. यानी आज की वीडियो में we'll discuss the process of industrialization and we'll sum up the whole process 88 के टाइम से लेके आज तक जो चेंजेस या जो हमारा प्रोसेस ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन चल रहा है उसको डिस्कस करेंगे आज की वीडियो में. बिफोर मूविंग टू टुडेज टॉपिक, लेट्स हैव अ क्विक रिव्यू एज पर आवर ट्रेडिशन कि हमारी पिछली जो वीडियो थी या पिछला टाइम पीरियड था उसमें क्या सिचुएशन थी या क्या प्रोसेस ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन था. क्विकली रिकॉल करें. आपको याद होगा कि दैट वाज द टाइम पीरियड ऑफ पाकिस्तान and that was the time period of having impressive industrial growth rate in Pakistan, time period of denationalization, deregulation, liberalization. So private sector regained their confidence और हमारा जो इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर था ओवरऑल लास्ट टाइम पीरियड जो हमने डिस्कस किया था उसमें इम्प्रेसिव ग्रोथ शो कर रहा था. Then comes the time period of 1988 when IMF and World Bank, not only in Pakistan but throughout the world, they started or they have got intervention in the economies of different countries and particularly developing countries, developing economies like Pakistan. तो 1988 में structural adjustment program start हुआ पाकिस्तान में by these financial institutions and we are going to discuss the impact of that program in Pakistan's economy and particularly on the industrial sector of Pakistan. So the political economic background of the role of the IMF and World Bank that started to play its work in the Pakistan's economy after 1988, and that was the 7th 5-year plan time period 1988 onward, which the plan or the policies or the reforms for the industrial sector were formed under the directions or instructions by the program launched by these financial institutions, structural adjustment program. तो जो इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी उन दिनों बनाई गई है, इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी के जो पॉइंट्स थे, those points were under the directives or instructions of the IMF and World Bank. Let's proceed. So first of all, industrial sector reforms. Industrial sector reforms and that time period proposed by the structural adjustment program that were they need and there is a need to have the further deregulation as we are already discussing कि लास्ट टाइम पीरियड में इकोनॉमी में डीरेगुलेशन और लिबरलाइजेशन स्टार्ट हो गई थी, डीनेशनलाइजेशन स्टार्ट हो गई थी. तो इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर रिफॉर्म्स इंक्लूडेड फर्दर डीरेगुलेशन and liberalization of the economy, privatization of further institutes or institutions and enterprises, then the tariff reforms, change in the tariff structure of the economy, regulation of the foreign investment. The structural adjustment program focused over the foreign direct investment in Pakistan. So the regulation of this foreign investment was also part of the structural reforms for industrial sector in this time period. And further reforms include that first of all the program started in 1988. So immediately after start of the structural adjustment program, the industrial policy was formed and outlined in 1988 for 3 years till 1991. एंड उसके जो पॉइंट्स थे वो हम कुछ पॉइंट्स यहाँ पे डिस्कस करेंगे. फर्स्ट वाज द डीरेगुलेशन ऑफ बिजनेस डिसीजंस, एज आई ऑलरेडी टोल्ड. द स्ट्रक्चरल एडजस्टमेंट प्रोग्राम और द लिबरलाइजेशन स्ट्रेटजी ऑफ द इकोनॉमीज इज बेसिकली to liberalize the businessman, to liberalize the business decisions or to reduce the public sector interference in the business, enhancing the export incentives for export promotion, reducing the level of protection. Basically, foreign trade, the both sides of the foreign trade or traders should be encouraged. So for that reason, the industrial policy includes the reduction of production level in the economy, reducing the list of restricted imports to encourage imports further, and there is a critical point that they increase their political influence in the economies by increasing the imports to the developing countries, divesting the shares of the public sector and coming to the private sector, further denationalization, yeah, opening you can say public sector enterprises थी, opening those enterprises to the private sector for investment. अब ये जो इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर रिफॉर्म्स 1988 में लॉन्च हुई और 1991 तक के लिए 3 इयर्स के लिए था, तो ये 3 इयर्स की रिफॉर्म्स के ऊपर देयर वाज अ रिव्यू प्रोग्राम ऑफ द वर्ल्ड बैंक इन 1991. So the review program quoted that the economy and particularly the industrial sector responded very well to these policy reforms, that they have seen the progress in implementing the structural reforms, and private sector activity जो है वो increase करना एक objective था, तो that participation has been exceptional. Manufacturing sector growth जो कि previous time period में improve होना start हुई थी, that managed to have impressive rate of 7.4%. So finally, World Bank and IMF concluded that 3-year structural adjustment program 1988 से 1991 तक that went very well, especially with the perspective of industrial sector or manufacturing sector of the economy. So now we'll divide the whole time period into different time periods to have a brief review or brief analysis कि 1990s में industrial sector में क्या process था, ये process of industrialization क्या situation थी, और फिर ये 2000 में क्या था. So 1990s was the time period when manufacturing sector growth reduced its average from 8.21% to 4.8% average. Higher growth से वो growth rate जो है वो fall किया. Even 1996-97 में industrial sector growth was minus 0.1%. 1990 or 2000 year में जाके it was only 1.5%. So one can well analyze the first point which we had discussed initially in the first introductory lecture, the performance of the economy remains very volatile, particularly if you look at the manufacturing sector of Pakistan. In the first 2 or 3 decades, it was very impressive. An economy was said to be as a role model for the other developing economies on the basis of industrial growth and manufacturing growth. Manufacturing sector had recorded growth among the other developing economies of the world. वही मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर एक टाइम आता है जब वो माइनस ग्रोथ जो शो कर रहा है, तो that shows that we were not able to sustain our development or sustain our impressive growth rate of the sector. Industrial sector in 1990s throughout the time सिर्फ एक चीज़ को उसने इंश्योर किया है कि हमारी जो इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर है या मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर है वो डिटीरियोरेट हो रहा है, उसमें ग्रोथ बिल्कुल भी नज़र नहीं आती. देन कम्स टाइम पीरियड ऑफ 1990s एनालिसिस. अब हम अगर इस टाइम को एनालिसिस करें तो वील कम अक्रॉस विद सम फैक्ट्स कि सारी गवर्नमेंट्स जो थी इस टाइम पीरियड की, दे वर फोकसिंग ओवर द प्राइवेट सेक्टर. दे वर रिलाइंग फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर ग्रोथ ओवर द प्राइवेट सेक्टर. इनिशियल जो टाइम पीरियड था पाकिस्तान में प्रोसेस ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन का, the focus and the responsibility was on the shoulder of the public sector. Our public sector was to lead the investment and the manufacturing sector, but after structural adjustment programs, there was a wave of private sector to lead the industrial development in the economy. So it was not surprising that situation कि public investment जो थी वो reduce हो गई. पर जो एक डिस्टर्बिंग फैक्ट वो ये है कि पब्लिक सेक्टर इन्वेस्टमेंट तो रिड्यूस हुई, प्राइवेट सेक्टर इन्वेस्टमेंट वर आल्सो रिड्यूस्ड इन दैट टाइम पीरियड. पब्लिक इन्वेस्टमेंट वाज इवन हायर 9.2% एज अ परसेंटेज ऑफ जीडीपी, जबकि प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट थी दैट वाज 7.8% एज परसेंटेज ऑफ जीडीपी. सो दैट वाज अ डिस्टर्बिंग फैक्ट. Then come the review or the analysis of industrial sector in year 2000. As I've already quoted, we take 2 different eras or 2 different time periods after SAP in Pakistan. Most of the investment and manufacturing indicators improved in year 2000. So indicators show improvement, and then comes investment, fixed and total. Both investments grew in the economy, and the main motor of investment, or main sector behind this improvement is the private sector. And private sector investment was almost 3 times higher as much as the public sector investment. That was 12.6% as compared to the public investment of 4.8% only. So the trend of shifting the industrial sector responsibility, or the leading sector for industrial growth, was now private sector, and it was initially the public sector. Initially, when Pakistan started beginning the industrial policy in the country, so initial जो हमारे indicators नजर आते हैं उसमें public sector was the main motor of investment. Public sector was responsible for capital formation, and it was public sector which helped a lot. But now there is a clear shift of dynamics of investment in Pakistan. Now the private sector is the leading sector for industrial sector development and growth and investment. So let's quickly summarize the whole time period of 1988 onwards in the Pakistan. So industrial sector को अगर हम deeply analyze करें, so that suffered after that structural adjustment program which was initiated in 1988. और सारे time period में अगर हम देखें तो it was the only 9/11 जो 9/11 का इंसिडेंट था, उसके बाद इंडस्ट्रियल ग्रोथ या इंडस्ट्रियल इन्वेस्टमेंट पाकिस्तान में बेहतर नज़र आती है. उन ईयर्स में इसने पिकअप किया. सो मेन रीज़न why the manufacturing sector and the economy grew in the decades of 2000 after the dismal performance of 1990s, it was the consequence of the windfall gains on account of 9/11, and especially rescheduling of the Pakistan's jet following 9/11. So these were the reasons behind why Pakistan's economy picked up in that time period. Growth and investment in Pakistan depends on the incentives to the private sector and on the supportive conditions in which private sector is willing to invest. So we can well summarize कि पाकिस्तान में industrial development, industrial growth now depends on the private sector, and private sector will not invest unless they'll have the proper incentives and the conditions supportive to the investment in the country. So it also matters that what is the political and social and economic condition in the country. We can also see that after the 2008 there's a consequence of war on terror as well. Global recession also affecting Pakistan. There's a phenomenal rise in the world oil and food prices. All of these factors or conditions are not supportive for investment in the country. And besides these external factors, we cannot deny the fact that there is a poor performance and the lack of the vision and clarity, which also played a significant role in reduction of the investment in the country. So this is all about the process of industrialization after the structural adjustment program in the country. And we had discussed the 1990s time period in Pakistan's industrial sector, and then the 2000 time period in Pakistan's industrial sector. So when one can well analyze that after the advent of WTO and the globalization and increasing the competition in the world market, the future of Pakistan industrial sector is very challenging. We need to restore the investment of the private sector as well as the public sector. So now we are going to conclude today's lecture, and in the next lecture or the next video we'll be discussing the key issues or the critical issues related to the industrial sector of Pakistan, which are basically constrained towards industrial development and growth in the country. So I'll see you in the next video. Till that time I'll suggest you कि आप अपना recommended book जो है उसमें से सारा जो content है उसको thoroughly read through करें, और साथ साथ अगर आप पढ़ते रहेंगे तो it will become very easy for you to understand and comprehend. If you pile up your work, so at the end of time or at the end of day before the exams you will be confused. So better to have your work on the daily basis. अपने लेक्चर के साथ ही अपना जो कंटेंट है उसको अपनी रिकमेंडेड बुक से पढ़ लिया करें.